Well, welcome. Thank you, everyone. Today, we're not going to go super deep technical because it's a Monday. Who was up too late because of the Super Bowl last night? Oh, come on, don't lie. Was I the only one? Seriously?
100%.
Okay. So anyway, we're going to be a little lazy today, but we're going to have a really good conversation about how we break down communication and collaboration inside of Microsoft 365. I've been in this space for a long time. In fact, I even have a slide that says how long. I've been working with Microsoft products and technologies for about 15 years. Started as a server admin. Do I have any Moss people on the call? Anyone do Moss? No, I'm the oldest one here. Moss, Sharon, I know you did. But my first farm was a 2007 farm. I got tired of just working with servers. I went into training, which led to consulting. And now I'm the director of customer and partner success at Orchestry, where we help make Microsoft 365 management a little bit more better than how it is out of the box. But every time I'm talking to people and having these conversations, it's like, but when do we use what? Especially from the user perspective, SharePoint and OneDrive feel very similar if I'm just trying to do stuff with files. Teams, when do I use Teams? Or should I be in SharePoint or should I just be in Teams? Right? How does all that stuff work? Not to mention Yammer, aka newly rebranded officially everywhere this week as Viva Engage. So let's talk about it. Because let's all be honest, back in the day, life was simpler, right? If we wanted to communicate with someone, we'd send an email. If we were super fancy, we used Skype, or if any of you are as old as I am, Office Communicator Server, right? We had ways to get to people. I even remember Live Meeting. Been a while. I heard that. Document collaboration was pretty darn easy too, right? If we were in the world where had SharePoint, that's where we put our stuff. Otherwise, we used file shares. Still a lot of file share usage out there today. And who remembers having to put in a ticket with the help desk if we needed to share that huge PDF with lots of images in it, and we couldn't send it an email, and we didn't have outside people in SharePoint, so we'd have to get an FTP site, right? That's how we did it. We didn't have a lot of options, so we went with what we needed at the time. But modern times call for modern tools. Inside of Microsoft 365, we can do that document collaboration externally. It's easier to share externally than it's ever been before. Pros and cons, right? Collaboration, we've got more options than we've had before. I actually went out and I found the updated periodic table of Microsoft 365. Since this is not in PowerPoint Live, that's not a clickable link. But jump to 365.com has this awesome diagram that's been updated. But when you look at all the various entry points here, all the different ways you can work with content, that can feel a little intimidating. And if we were to drop our user base just right here in the middle of this, right, I don't know that many of us would get very far without help, especially because I want a place to do tasks. Am I going to do that in the Planner app? Am I going to do that in a Microsoft list, task list? Am I going to use To Do? If I want to share documents, am I going to share from SharePoint, OneDrive? Am I going to do it in Teams? Am I going to keep it on my desktop and then share an email? And Sarah just asked if there's a slide deck being shown. There is. Everybody else seems to be seeing it okay, or I feel like somebody would have yelled at me.
I can see it.
Okay.
Is there anybody else that can't see it? Okay, I see people saying I can't see it.
What's the good solution to that? Usually I would say maybe drop off and come back in. Just kick Teams kind of gently, see if it starts to cooperate with you. Another question I see is Planner going away. I have not heard anything on the roadmap about Planner not continuing to be supported. Now on the left rail in Teams, you'll see that they call it tasks by Planner and To Do, because it kind of is giving you one place where you can see tasks that are organized by if they're on your to-do list or planner, right? But it seems like there's more than one way to do a given task inside of Microsoft 365. And when we start really drilling into that, it feels like it's almost too many options. I've done a lot of success workshops, governance workshops, intranet implementations, and it gets to the point where the customer, the business user, says, oh my gosh, stop with the options. Just tell me what to do. Can you please? We're paying you by the hour. Just take an hour and tell me what to do. And I think Sharon can agree with me on this. The more we start to dig into these tool sets, the less it becomes about the technology and the capabilities of the tool, and more about who are we working with and how do we need to work with those people. How do we need to collaborate in such a way that they can do what they need to do, but we still stay safe and secure behind firewalls and permissions and accounts and all that good stuff. So we ask our questions about the who, the how, and the why, and it can drive us to the better solution inside of Microsoft 365. The person I need to share a file with, are they inside of my company? If so, that becomes really easy. Are they external? That could be a little bit more complicated. Am I just sending out an email blast to people and I don't need any feedback? Or is it something that we need to work on together and go through a draft process? Do we need to be in close communication while we're working? Or is it just, hey, call me if you need me? So as we get in, it becomes clearer and clearer that we've got a multi-tool or a Swiss Army knife, not a cookie cutter, because we're working with people. We have options. I feel like it's almost a tagline anymore. It's like we have options. I say it all the time. You have options. SharePoint, and I remember years ago, there was a lot of talk, are we still going to have SharePoint? Then Teams hits, and it's really, really big. And they're like, oh, but we don't need SharePoint anymore because we're in Teams. Not so fast. Because SharePoint is kind of that big blade in that Swiss Army knife. That's where all the content that we as an organization work on, that's where it lives. And it's where our security and permissions really start to come into play. But then we use Power Automate, Power Apps, Teams, even Outlook, Yammer to share, collaborate, or work on that content. So let's break it down. Let's break it down by audience. Who are we working with? Typically, that falls into one of these three categories. Me, myself, and I, maybe you. I might need to send something to Jonathan that he and I can work on together, but it's not really ready to go to a team, a site, or a project workspace yet. I just need someone to put some eyes on something for me, right? That's what I'm saying. Me, myself, and I, maybe you. Or is it teamwork? Are we coming together as a department? Or is it all of us collectively as the organization? I need to publish content out so employees can get to and read that content. Well, if it's me, myself, and I, maybe you, then OneDrive is probably where I need to be. And my rule of thumb, I say this a lot when we talk about OneDrive for one person. I was on site with some folks might have been Arkansas a couple of years ago, and they were terrified of SharePoint. So they mimicked their file share in OneDrive, and were having a really hard time because they were trying to share content out on OneDrive the same way they did on a file share. But OneDrive is designed to be user-centric, right? My username and password, my content, my OneDrive from my one person. They were having a really hard time, but they'd heard that SharePoint wasn't as secure as OneDrive. Like, well, it's actually kind of the same thing, right? So we had to have a conversation and talk about if you're sharing content for a department, a group, the SharePoint, because sharing is caring. But if it's my content, maybe it's my personal notes that I take during a meeting that for some reason don't need to be in like OneNote for the team. Or if it's my slide deck that I'm working on for a presentation like this, or if it's my employee review with my boss, I'm going to put that in OneDrive. And I'm going to work on that content. My meeting recordings go to my OneDrive, and I can choose if I need to share those with other people. I absolutely love that I can sync my OneDrive to my desktop. So if I'm working another tool or I need to do some drag and drop on content, I can do that very easily. I live on this guy, right? I've got the OneDrive app. The OneDrive changed my life. So I'm going to share with you something. It's kind of a personal story. I hope you don't mind. But I am a recovering desktop dumper. And I say every day that I'm recovering because I have to try not to do that thing every day. I kind of get stuck in this trap of where I need to work fast. And you got your document up and you're working, you need to put it somewhere. I'm just gonna throw it on my desktop and I'll get back to it later. I was once cleaning out my old desk and I found my external hard drive, 2 terabyte, super fancy back in the day. And I was like, I don't even know what's on here anymore. And I plug it in and there was a folder called desktops. And there was a folder in that folder called desktop 4, which means, I think you all know what this means. At one point, my desktop had gotten so cluttered, I grabbed it all and threw it in a folder and called it desktop. And then there was a 1 and then a 2. How helpful is that? Probably not super helpful. The fact that I didn't even remember it was there probably means it wasn't super important. But if I ever needed to get to that content on the road, it was on an external hard drive sitting in a desk drawer, right? But we can configure OneDrive to back up our desktop, to back up the documents in our computer. And actually, what broke my habit was I had a laptop. I won't say who made it, but I mean, they're a reputable hardware manufacturer. But this laptop was a lemon, and it just got to where it would just shut down randomly. It got to where it wouldn't hold a charge, and I just didn't know, am I going to be able to get in today or not? So I forced myself to organize everything into OneDrive. So if that laptop died, I could go to my old one that lived in the closet that one of the fans never stopped running. I could fall back to that if I needed to. I've never looked back. During COVID, go outside for a walk, right? Weren't going into offices and everything was a little bit crazy. My boss needed a document. I'm on my walk, but I can send it from my phone, from the OneDrive app. I can take pictures of receipts when I'm on the road, store it in my expense folder. It's beautiful. I can choose what content stays on my desktop or my mobile phone. I can get to it without internet access. And then when I need to free up space, I send it on. It's beautiful. And it's a lot of talk about a tiny little app. But when we really embrace and look at all the capabilities OneDrive has, it becomes very, very powerful. In fact, if you pay attention inside of Teams and SharePoint, when your Files tab in Teams or your document libraries in SharePoint, you'll see Add Shortcut to OneDrive. It's beautiful. It gives you a shortcut to that library right inside of your personal OneDrive instead of that separate synchronized location outside of your OneDrive. Seamless access to all of the content you need. And I'm going to look at this question real quick. Oh, I see some guilty desktop dumpers. If your Teams group allow external guest users, that's the best option. Oh, I see. This is layered. What if the department team external contacts is like a vendor? Let's talk about this as we get into the SharePoint and Teams stuff. Because if that's the kind of thing that we are going to have frequent collaboration, then it might make sure to have a team where that happens, or maybe even these days a shared channel with those people. But Teams work absolutely makes the dream work. So I've transitioned from just my own personal work stuff into content that I'm working with my department or maybe a functional business area in my organization. Could be a project group, could be an organizational unit, however you describe and break that down. But if we're working together on content, that's where Teams and SharePoint really come together and provide that great touch point for communication and collaboration. And you can't have Teams without SharePoint, because every time you put a piece of content into the Files tab, it's really being stored in that connected SharePoint library. So we're getting that familiar, trusty owners, members, users, those permissions. We're getting our versioning, where we can have that document control piece there for lifecycle management. And that gives me a place not only where I'm organizing my content. So every time I create a channel in Teams, I get a beautiful folder structure in SharePoint, but I organize my communication as well. So I have that great one-stop place where I can be talking to my team about the stuff we're working on, and it just stays married together, and it's beautiful. And I don't have to share links all around the world and back. Does this mean that we don't really need to use Outlook anymore? Not really. But I would encourage you, if you haven't made that jump to using Teams to keep that group level communication together, to try it. Because now you don't have to go back to Outlook. There's Siri, find that, 20 email thread deep conversation that's been going on, and then find where the paperclip is to find where in the conversation the document was attached. All that gets organized inside of Teams for you. So when we step back and go, okay, is this initiative we're working on, does it make sense to be a team? If we say yes, that means we're probably going to keep all of that communication in one place, Teams, and not be scattered between Outlook and Teams, or heaven forbid, text messages here and there and Teams and this. We've just got that one-stop shop for it. We still may have groups that just work better not inside of Teams, right? We need to think about the audience, think about where we are and how we can get people to that one place. But that's where adoption initiatives can absolutely come into play. So we talked about me, myself, and I. We talked about teamwork makes the dream work. But then what about if it's something that needs to be for everyone in the organization? The corporation as a whole, all of us together. And that's where typically our SharePoint communication sites are going to come into play, because that creates a platform for us to take our organizational content. HR is a great example of this. HR creates a lot of content that everyone in the organization needs to be able to get to. They need to be able to read it, consume it, maybe act on it, but not edit it. They're not in charge of it. They're consumers of it. And that's where our intranet comes into play, where we can have a place where everyone with a username and password, employees inside of the organization, can go find that content and the information that's designed for all of us. Company public is kind of how I call that, because you're in the company and you can just browse to that site, find the information you need. Those content will come up in your search results when you're searching for the inclement weather policy because it's winter in Kansas City. So it gives me a place where I can go find that content. We also have Yammer as a great tool for corporations. It's not so much document centric. It's probably not where I'm going to expect my employees to go find all of their policies, their procedures, or their work instructions. But it is a place where I can communicate to my employee base. There's been a change. There's been an update. There's a great new initiative that's in place. And this is where we can talk about it and engage as a company, whether you sit on this side of the desk or the other. It's a platform for us to communicate. And Outlook, still very much an important part of corporate communication. Because I'm going to go to Teams and I'm going to send a chat to everybody I work with the most, right? I'm going to send a chat to my department. I'm going to send a chat to my colleague. I'm going to send a chat to people that I want to talk to that I know. I'm going to be in Teams. I'm going to have posts for our project work. And we're going to keep our communication about our day in, day out work in that post channel for our team. But if I have a question for the CIO, I don't think I'm going to send them a one-on-one chat that says, hey, what's up? I have a question about something. I feel like that's probably a place for an email because it's a little bit more formal and concise. And it's a great place to do blanket communications. So we can send out the corporate newsletter in email for the people that are still using email, expecting to find that kind of communication. But then maybe I also post it in Yammer. So it's a great place for them, for the people that are not so much email centric, a place for them to go. We're living in interesting times. Stephen Rose has a session that he does, and it fascinates me. I've seen it twice live. But he talks about the fact that right now in corporate America, around the world, we have 4 distinct generations in the workplace. We've got our baby boomers, our Gen X, our millennials, and our Gen Z. And we need to make sure when we're putting forward content and communication that we're meeting the needs of those distinct generations. We don't want anyone to ever miss something important because we put it in Yammer and maybe some of our older Gen X or baby boomers are expecting to see it in email. but we've got the tools in Microsoft 365 to meet those people where they are and have multiple paths to that single source of truth. So I see a question here from Ruth. What about creating a company-wide teams? When would be a time to create one? So I'm going to give you a consultant answer, which I know you'll appreciate. It depends. Shared channels is another thing that got mentioned earlier. And that's another it depends thing as well. Inside of Orchestry, we use shared channels for like support. So inside of my team, which is the customer and partner success team, we have a channel for support that's got our lead developer, who's also our CIO, and one of the other head devs. That channel exists in customer and partner success. It exists in the product team, and it exists in the dev team. But it's the same channel. And it's just those people plus the success folks. So we can have those conversations without spamming everybody about everything all the time. It works beautifully for internal use cases. You could also use a shared channel to connect with another business. I can send some information on through Sharon. We do like a follow-up email for this, but you can configure shared channels. You've got to do some stuff in Azure. It's like a B2B, business to business connect. They've got to approve it. You've got to approve it in Azure. And you can connect with people from other organizations in that channel with no tenant switching. And you can pick which of your teams you put it in. It can be a very clean way to kind of elevate how you work with your vendors and your partners and external collaborators inside of teams. But for Ruth's question, well, what if I'm not sure I need Yammer, maybe I need Teams? That's when we'll sit down. I've got a few slides and just talk about culture and what we need when, because this is an old slide, but I still use it intentionally because I like the circle graph. Teams is typically where we work. Microsoft used to call it our inner loop. The people that we know at work, that we work with frequently. We're on projects together. We're on the same department. We do stuff together, and that's where we work. Yammer is seen as a place where you can connect across the organization. A former customer of mine wanted to create a Yammer community for safety. And this is not where you would go to fill out a safety incident report, right? This isn't where you go if you needed 911 emergency help. But they wanted to connect with the employees. They're in oil and gas. They've got guys and gals out inspecting pipelines and doing dangerous jobs. But they want to present a kinder, friendlier face for safety. Did you know this is how many days we've gone without an incident? Look at this great thing that's been put in place to help you when you need to know how to put on your personal protection equipment, all that good kind of stuff. They don't know all those people intimately, but it's a platform to connect. Email, you need to submit an incident report, you're probably going to email that in. So it's a way inside of Microsoft 365, there's a place for the people you work with closely. There's a place to engage with the whole organization. And then email kind of spans all of that. Now, it's interesting. Team support, like you could have an org-wide team with 10,000 people in it, which can absolutely begin to feel like a conflict with Yammer. Should I do Yammer? Should I do Teams? And Annette, to answer your question, yes, you could configure SharePoint sites to be accessed externally. We can talk about that here as we go. Yammer, it's seen as a little bit more fun. It's a little social. You can do little videos now, kind of like Reels or TikToks, but much more secure. You can reach across the organization to be accessible to everyone. You can have visibility. You can put that Yammer web part, which is gorgeous, on intranet landing pages or maybe even the home page. It's got beautiful features for doing upvotes. So we have a question and people can answer, and the best answer can be voted up so we know what the correct answer is. And it's a really great place to share and celebrate wins across the organization. Teams tends to be more for collaboration, communication with work groups, but maybe we're a 200-person company and maybe the workforce already feels a little spread out with a lot of different apps. it might make sense for Teams to be the app you use because we're already there. We're familiar with it. Maybe we're not ready to take on another tool, or maybe we don't need Yammer in our organization quite yet. That's perfectly fine. You've got the ability to do either one. So really, it's what's going to fit best with your company. A lot of organizations have their employee interest groups, create their communities in Yammer, which is now officially Viva Engage. There's an app in Teams, and you can pin it and get to it right from Teams. But they have that communication and that socialization there, whereas inside of Teams, it's still going to be the more project and day in and day out work. I like to think of it kind of in the confines of the modern architecture schema that Microsoft has. Teams is where my task-based work happens. If I need to do something that my paycheck is dependent on and people are expecting from me, I'm doing that in Teams. Those are the things I need to know about every day. But the things that I want to know about, the things I want to engage in, but it's not part of my paid grade, it's not something that I'm judged on in my performance evaluation, that's the kind of stuff that could go into Yammer. And it can help with notification fatigue. Because if everything is always coming from Teams all the time, and it's all the alerts and the pings and the dings and the my important tasks and those important alerts might get drowned out because they're mixed in with the fun stuff, or I might drive myself crazy because I'm getting an alert for everything. And now I have to look at everything because it might be important. It might not be, but I have to look, and it's always popping up in front of my face, like Pavlov's dog at that point. So if you want to create an environment where you have the very definite division between need to know, very important, Teams, fun stuff, you don't have to jump when you hear the alarm, Yammer. Looking beyond the apps, back to how do we work together best? Do your teammates, do your colleagues work better in that fast-paced one-on-one kind of group chat? Do you have a lot of calls and meetings? Or do they do better working through an email queue? Right? What's going to work best for the group we're needing to engage with? What communication tools are going to work best for the people that we need to reach and work with? Live events? A more social platform like Yammer, aka Viva Engage? Or again, do we need to make sure it's very routine, emails, and then we can follow up with more engaging content inside of Teams or inside of Yammer? But what's going to be the best way to promote that communication and that clear vision in the organization? So breaking down the architecture, right? SharePoint, we've got those communication sites. They create very cleanly. I don't get a Microsoft 365 group with a communication site, which means I cannot connect a team to it. But it gives me a beautiful, visually stunning page can be created to broadcast information out to the organization. If there's a Yammer community or a Viva Engage, is it still a community? I don't know. Group, I can have that web part on the page so I can interact right from SharePoint, or if I'm in Teams, I can interact from the app. Teams is where I get my work done. I think it was Bill Bear that said, Teams is where you make the sausage, and Yammer is where you communicate and show off the delicious sausage that was made. So that's another way you can look at it. But teamwork in Teams, department management, approvals and versioning, all that happens through the connection of SharePoint holding those documents. And you can use hub sites inside of SharePoint to connect all that content together when that architecture gets kind of wide and we need a way to bring it back together. Teams work makes the dream work. I can access my team-centric documents. We discuss and have those lively conversations and get feedback in the posts. And then we can use tabs in Teams to connect to the content. Teams does allow, through external sharing, the ability to invite guests in. If you invite a guest in your team, by default, they get access to that connected SharePoint site. It's all within the confines of that Microsoft 365 group. If you're just working on a SharePoint site, and you need the ability to bring people in, if again, the tenant is configured to allow that, you can invite guests to be members or read-only visitors just to your SharePoint site. And then Yammer gives us the ability to have the areas of interest, org-wide, corporate campaigns, whatever the need is. However we break that down in the architecture, the intranet now basically is SharePoint and Teams coming together. And I messed up on my slide animation, but that's okay. So when I start on the intranet, I get SharePoint, Teams, either of those starting points. I get to my files, my PDFs, my OneDrive content from either one. I can also get to other Microsoft 365 applications. If I'm in SharePoint, I can have a Planner web part on the page, or I could use that app launcher and launch Planner. Same for Forms, Stream, Power Apps, Whiteboard, that's here for you, Jonathan. Whatever I need, I can get to that through the tabs in Teams or web parts in SharePoint. And then other third-party applications. If I'm utilizing YouTube videos because I need to share them externally, tab in Teams, web parts in SharePoint, GitHub, Orchestra, shameless plug, those third-party apps tie right in. And I can also use links, quick links in SharePoint or tabs in Teams to get to other SharePoint sites, other SharePoint document libraries where I've got maybe official invoices and contracts and reference material, or other websites that I need to access throughout the course of my day. Got that ability to get to that from either SharePoint or Teams. And then the architecture starts to kind of look like this. Where's my magnifying glass? So modern Microsoft 365 is or should be very, very flat. The goal is to keep content in a single top-level site, what we used to call site collection, and not create subsites below it. And if we're working in our libraries, flat. We might create a layer of folders, such as we get in our document library when we have Teams channels, but we don't then go into those folders and create more folders deep, deep, deep. Search starts to get yucky, page load times gets really slow. It's not a great situation. We create additional channels or additional document libraries. And then you can create this just beautiful structure that all kind of works together. My SharePoint communication homepage or home site, where I have corporate news, volunteer opportunities. That's a Yammer community. That's this guy right here. Department pages, so I can go to the operations site. I can go to finance and accounting and get the expense report template that I'm supposed to use. I can go put in a ticket with IT from the links. If I need to go all the way to human resources, I can do that. Human resources has a communication site. So I can go to the PTO calendar and request time off. I can read policies. I can get new hire forms or fill out the benefits package. All of that gets created and maintained from the team or teams that that department has. Most of us never see it, but HR has their team site and they have teams where they're creating content, doing policy revisions, dealing with employee requests and needs and questions. All of that happens behind the scenes in Teams and SharePoint. So the architecture can build out very, very wide, but each of these is an opportunity to get to your content, be it in SharePoint, Planner, Forms, all the way across. Let me get out of that. So at this point, we start talking about how do we plan for success? How do we plan to make sure we're using the right tool for the right group to meet the need? A big part of that is whether you're a business analyst or maybe you're someone that's really interested in technology, but you're not in IT. That's great. I never started out to be in IT and it just happened. But we look at the existing tools that we have, we communicate. The business talks to IT and IT listens. IT communicates with the business and the business listens. And together we can take the existing tools that we have the conversation, define what success is, really understand the needs, have that back and forth communication, and build that bridge to success by making sure the rules around guests are written in such a way that it facilitates what our business needs to have guests as editors in SharePoint or as contributors in Teams, right? Making sure security is in place, needs are met, using the tools that we have to move forward. And that's the exciting thing too. When I'm making sure that the business needs are being met, I'm meeting a need that can prevent shadow IT from stepping into the organization. So Annette has questions about guests inside of SharePoint. Well, if IT just says, nope, you're not allowed to do that. And they never give Annette a way to work with her content and those guests the way she needs to, she's going to find a way. She's got to do her job. She's got reports that need to be done and documents that need to be edited. Would we rather her work within the confines of SharePoint and Teams, or would we rather take that offline and go use a totally different tool set that we don't have any insight into? So planning for success, having conversations with business and with IT, we can make sure that the tools and the context around them brings us to success. And that was my last slide. Going to do a little trickery in the background because I should have another one and I don't. I must have hidden it. Let's fix that. Any questions, conversations, fun stories? I get the right slide up. There it is. Is this helpful at all?
I think it's great that you talk to the point of what are we trying to accomplish, not what tool should I use. We're starting with the what do I need, not with what tool do I force into something.
That I was at an organization that had SharePoint because one guy really wanted it and got the check signed, and then it sat for 2 years with nobody touching it because nobody knew. So success, it's important. It's awesome.
Yeah. Bought but not adopted, right?
Yes. And I think that's, and Sharon and I have these conversations a lot, and our buddy Jay Leask, and we talk about this quite a bit too. It's with Microsoft 365, it's not so much tools and tech and driving the technology as going to the business and finding out what the need is. Because I can have someone come to me and say, I need to be able to collaborate. You have a phone, call people. That's collaboration, right? What does it truly mean? Because there's so darn much we can do in the platform now. Things we didn't dream about 10 years ago. It's super exciting, but it's intimidating for folks. So just talking to people is really a big first step.
What? What? Ask them what they need? What kind of nonsense is that?
Just
That's what I have email for. I don't have to talk to people.
Does anybody have any questions for Joy? While we have her, we've got her for a few more minutes. If anybody has any questions, feel free to, jump on camera, unmute, pop things in chats. I see a lot of people learning a lot, but if anybody has any questions for Joy, just,
Please.
feel free to join us.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier about having information on shared channels. If you could share that, I would really, really appreciate that.
I can do that.
Thank you.
And Ruth, I know how to get in touch with you, but Sharon, I'll get you the slides that's got some of that stuff. And if you want, if there's a fun way to share that out or something, we'll figure that out.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Oh, Annette, you can absolutely message anyhow, anyway. LinkedIn is good. Joy of SharePoint on Twitter is good. Those are the two main places where I am.
Thank you. That's brilliant.
Oh, my pleasure.
Hey, Joy.
Yes.
You mentioned hub sites. Can you explain the purpose or the need for hub sites?
Oh, can I ever? I hear you, Jonathan. Let me see how fast I can find a slide. So, hub sites are one of the most magical things in modern architecture, in my opinion. I'm a little bit of an architecture nerd, though, so you have to take that with a grain of salt. Inside of SharePoint Online, we've got our team sites, which may or may not be connected to a team, and then we've got our SharePoint communication sites. And we all know Microsoft hath said no more subsites. We still have a lot that are out there in different organizations, but the goal is to keep everything at that top level site. And that's really awesome in a lot of ways, because the deeper site structures go, typically the more tangled up permissions get, they get really kind of gross. The harder it is for search. So search only looks about 3 to 4 levels deep. It depends around that. It depends on how long your URLs are. It depends on a lot of stuff. But you want to try to keep content up as high as possible so it's ranked appropriately inside of search. So what has happened is, I found it. I found the presentation. Okay. What has happened is SharePoint. I'm going to share this. I am slideshow. You guys are getting a twofer. Awesome. Okay. Which screen am I going to share? I'm going to share this one here. You should see a teal screen that says the challenge of flat architecture. That was one that it starts to feel like our sites are just kind of scattered all over the place because they're not connected by that /site/HR/benefit/whatever. But what really happens is hub sites, and when you're in the admin center, you can say this site's going to be a hub site. They let us join together sites that are related in topic or in scope, but they're not constructed together. So it's almost like playing with Lego blocks. And an example might be, nope. Hang on, there it is. We're not necessarily trying to say, okay, I'm going to have a hub site for every department that's out there. And I'm going to take my communication site, my team site, and I'm going to join them to a hub. It's not really what we're trying to do, because that's not really things that work together. The people that need the company public stuff are going to go to the communication site, and the people that work in the department are going to go to the team. So what the heck would be the common resources on the hub site? What we do is we create like a hub for projects. So if I have 20 projects that are going on, I probably have PMOs, managers, or maybe even cross-population of employees on those projects. And they need a single place to be able to hop off to those projects. And probably in the organization, we have standards, standard templates, document templates, standard instructions, policies, maybe a single person to go to if I have a question or I need help. All that could live on the hub site, where we go and we say, okay, this is almost like the mothership. What we used to use is the top level site and a site collection. That lives there. And then we point all those other resources to the sites that I've said, I'm joining project site A to this project hub. All that happens either inside of the admin center or on the individual site. We had full time, I could go in and do that. Do I have a slide showing it? I don't. Yeah, I don't have a slide that shows that exact piece in this presentation, but it gives you a place to have that dedicated site that kind of calls the shots. And when I create a hub site and I join a site to it, it's just a button click. In fact, you can see it on this slide, hub site association. The theme of that hub site gets pushed down. I can create the navigation in such a way that they all share the same navigation. I can choose to sync hub visitors to all of the sites in the hub, or I can pick and choose where that makes sense. By default, permissions are not pushed down and inherited from a hub site to one of those spokes that gets connected to it. Your members, owners, and your site visitors all stay their own. They're not overwritten. So again, I can take what's wide in architecture and bring it together in a cohesive unit. And the good news is, so I used to work in the government, and the farm I worked on was built according to the org chart. But this particular group, we reorged every 6 months, whether we needed to or not. That was a nightmare. If at some point I decide that retail operations should not be associated with a customer hub, I simply click this drop down and say none, or I move it to another hub site where it makes sense. They're not built together with brick and mortar like site collections are. It's just a very dynamic association. I hope that's helpful. Was that helpful?
Yeah, it was very helpful. And it'd be great if you could have a webinar on that topic in full all the details and everything.
I would love to do that.
I don't know, Joy. Do you want to talk about hub sites?
I might want to talk about hub sites. I love SharePoint.
But we can twist our arm.
It hurts, Sharon. It hurts. Make it stop. I was just like talking. I think that's really, as someone asked me the other day, said, what did you do to do MVP? I said, I just talk a lot about SharePoint and Teams.
Mm-hmm.
I do have another
Is there a limit
question.
on hub site? Oh, yeah.
It's more on the security side of things out of a SharePoint site. And if you don't want to answer this, you don't have to. So if you have a SharePoint site and you want to share a link to a document externally, that individual has to be in the edit group or members group, I guess, so they can edit. But have you ever found where if someone creates a custom group and they remove maybe 1 or 2 options of the edit group out of there, that they can't share it anymore? And if that's the case, why?
Ruth, we need to sync because I think I talked to one of your coworkers recently.
Yes. Okay, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. So yeah, we can take it offline then.
We'll sync, but by default, you could choose to share a document, a folder, a file, a site with an individual and not even bring them into it. It just depends on your tenant configuration. Actually, I think the site was an incorrect statement, but folders, libraries, files. But yes, if you take that, they call it the members group now. They're editors by default, used to be contributors in the olden day. But editors, depending on how the site's configured, can share. Again, depending on how the site's configured, may or may not need the owner's approval to do that. But if you start editing away certain permissions, and I haven't figured out which one yet, yes, that ability to share is gone.
That's what I thought too. I'm thinking that it's a Microsoft thing that's the default in the edit. And if you change that, it won't work anymore after that. And there's no way to change it back. So yeah, we'll have to talk more then. I'm around this afternoon if you want to chat.
One of those rescheduled meetings I mentioned might have opened up a window. So yes, we'll chat.
Okay, sounds good. And this has been really great. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any fun observations, stories, questions? Always a lot to talk about in Microsoft 365.
Hey, how about when migrating existing file shares from like a Windows file share to SharePoint? Obviously, you just don't want to like lift and shift. You kind of want to structure it. Do you have any guidance or like what's the best way to plan or to develop it inside of SharePoint?
Oh, this could also be a whole topic. My first thing is look at the permissions of those file shares. Bust open one of those big folders, and anywhere where the permissions align, there's a good chance, not 100%, but there's a good chance that would be a site. Any areas, and I see as long as Sharon keeps nodding her head, I'm going to keep talking. Any areas where those permissions, like they've got subfolders and subfolders and subfolders where the permissions are different, again, find the like things and see if it makes sense to group those together. If you architect for permissions, you're going to have minimal tweaking later. So let the permissions guide you. I mean, there may be times like, but this just has to be its own thing, even though it doesn't make sense. Maybe the topic drives you to have a separate, maybe a policies site where everybody can come and have all the policies there instead of them each being separated on department sites, whatever makes sense there. You may have some things that want to be tweaked, but that would be my first thing. My second thing I would say to do, look at the names of some of those sub, and as far down as they go folders. There's a good chance you could create a document library. Several document libraries will probably come out of this. Use all the names of those in those sub folders as metadata and columns in document libraries. Try to think of a library in SharePoint as like a sub or a sub folder in Teams and the file share. Sorry. Wow. But kind of let that structure, it'll keep it familiar, but flatten it out as much as you can. And that's literally the tip of the iceberg, but.
Yeah, typically whenever you're moving, so we do a ton of content migrations. And the first thing that we like to do is exactly what Joy said, go in and we re-architect. Basically, we want to build an architecture document that's going to design what do you currently have? How does it make sense that you work with it? And what does that look like on the other side? And because everything is so group driven now, which was always really best practice, but now it's kind of forced, like your hand is forced to it. Instead of having a bazillion unique permissions, you can now say like, what group works with this content? And let's put all that content in the same place for that group. What group works with this content? Let's put that content in a specific place. And then we kind of handle the one-off separately. And I love your comment, Joy, because I say the same thing. Is if it's in folders, like 9 times out of 10, whatever folders you're using make fantastic categories for metadata. And then it just makes it really easy when you move it over, because you don't want to do a lot of deep folder structuring, because SharePoint search and some of the other features don't really support that deep structuring. You tend to run into issues. So it's a really nice way to re-architect it as you move over.
I'm going to put my tagline in chat.
Objects may appear closer than what? Oh.
Folders are the F word in SharePoint. And when you see people in Teams, I swear this is not a pitch, but like.
But what about Teams, Joy?
Orchestra has a report that you can run that shows you like all the teams that still just have only a general channel. You know, if they're only in the general channel and that's an active team, they are just cramming everything into folders in that one files tab, which means search is like, I don't know what you want. I can't find it. It's going to be slow. That means all of their chats about all those different topics, every folder is a topic. It could be organized in channels, are all getting jumbled up in the general channel. Oh, this could be so much better.
Agreed.
That's why I love doing user group stuff, is you can get really passionate and nobody is like, okay, lady, just stop.
No, I love it. I mean, these are people, dealing with real problems, real day-to-day work. Like, I love being able to chat about this stuff.
Oh, yes. Thank you for answering the 2,000 hub sites. I mean, if you are a ginormous organization, you could get to that many hub sites. If you get there quickly, stop, because there's a chance but it's all IT. But does that mean the audiences are the same? you know. Thank you, Rose. It's been so fun. This is how every Monday should be.
Yes. Well, you got a couple minutes left. If you guys, I know you guys probably have meetings to get to and lunches to eat and all kinds of fun things to do. But feel free to stick around for a couple more minutes. I think Joy will probably stick around for a couple more minutes, but if you need to go, we totally understand. Just wanted to tell everybody thank you so much for joining. I love this group and I love that everybody continues to get value out of it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Hopefully we'll see you guys next month where we talk about Power Platform community governance. And other than that, I'll see you guys next month.